Now it's time for June deer chores. It's crazy how fast the year's gone by. Like I said in the last one, we started with May deer chores in 2020 and we're keeping it going. And a lot of times I'm tailoring it, maybe a little bit different from year to year because we're talking about what we're doing right now on the property. And sometimes those activities are different now than what they were last year because we're in year 2 of the property. We're back in year 1 on a new property we just purchased next door. And I'm going to start with my favorite up here that actually is towards the end of the month. And we're going to finish with a favorite down here that I'll tell you about. But number 1, trail cams and mock scrapes. This is a great time. Get into the end of June. You can recognize bucks, especially older, mature bucks. You can start to recognize them. They have enough of a frame that you can say, that's that buck from last year. You can imagine when we start getting pictures and video of Venti coming up in June, especially towards the end of June, I expect him to look like a monster, and it'll be pretty cool to finally find him and get some pictures of him. We're actually starting to add some more cameras as we speak because we want to search for him a little bit better. But my favorite time coincides with mock scrape time. We're building our mock scrapes, we're refreshing our mock scrapes, we're cleaning them up, we're raking them out so there's a nice dirt pad that we expect to stay there for the entire year. Of course, we don't add any scent because the best scent on a mock scrape licking vine, vertical or horizontal, is the accumulation of preorbital gland scent from all the deer, does, bucks, and fawns that hit that and rub them. In fact, we find that they don't scrape very often. I would say less than 10% of the year, maybe only 5% of the year. Very short window where they're actually pawing the ground as opposed to coming in and leaving their preorbital gland scent on that branch. And what's the best scent of all? It can't. It's hard to argue with that there's anything better out there than the natural accumulation of scent that is left on a licking branch. So great time to get your cameras out, great time to get your mock scrapes out. You can identify bucks, you can identify future target bucks, and you can adjust your camera also over many months. We talk about that in another video, but this is a time where if those bucks are looking at your camera right now during the summertime with all the foliage, boy, they're really going to stick out during the fall. So you want to make some adjustments, set them a little higher, set them on a tree that's wider than the trail camera, and then make sure that the profile is hidden from the side. And those 3 things, along with a blackout camera like the Exodus we use, will make sure that those deer aren't staring at it. You have a lot of months to readjust your cameras when you start at the end of June. Now at the beginning of June, let's back up. 50 pounds of buckwheat per acre. That's when I'm broadcasting to begin my ultimate no-till planting system. I encourage folks to do that. I have a lot of people, thousands of people that have followed the last few years. I've encouraged that off and on for various clients going back for 15 years. Started using this process and originating and founding it back in the early 2000s. It's something that works. And not only do I encourage it, I use it for myself too. And we'll show you that process like we have the last couple of years. If you just look up ultimate no-till food plots, easy no-till food plot, buckwheat no-till food plot. There's a lot of keywords there that you can find out all about what we do and why we use no-till. But right now, we're out of frost date time. In fact, it's pretty hot right now, the end of May, and it's a good time when you get into early June to apply that buckwheat. In fact, if you're in poor soil areas, I'm looking at, you want 8-9 weeks of growth before your fall planting. So your fall planting, the best time for your fall planting, you always look at that time and then go backwards to figure out when you should put your buckwheat down. Out here, we're going to focus on that 7-8 week window for buckwheat growth. I don't want it to grow 6 weeks, only 6 weeks, and I don't want it to grow 9 weeks. I want it to be more in that chest high, easy to walk through stage. And at that point, it doesn't matter if it's 3 feet high or 5 feet high as far as the productivity of the buckwheat field and using it for that no-till process. But I just wanted to make it so it's not just that giant jungle that we had to walk through. And so I'll be either planting a little bit earlier this year, but I'll probably time it out for about 6.5 to 7 weeks, maybe 7.5 at the most before I plant into the standing buckwheat. But early June, great time, 50 pounds per acre. A lot of people say, what's that setting on the Earthway? I use an Earthway model 2750, a bag spreader. And it really depends on how fast you walk, what your coverage rate is, how fast you're moving your arms. And I can say I've rarely wasted seed because I always go on the light side. So since the end of the 90s, I've figured it out on my own. And I'm not just going to say figure it out on your own. That's what I feel like saying sometimes, because as I've done hundreds of times these different seeds, I would say, if I guessed, I would say your buckwheat is around 2.5 to 3 on that setting. But again, I encourage you to start with a small, well-known, defined space. Put the exact amount in your bag spreader. Cheat towards an error on the side of caution as far as putting out too much too fast. See what your coverage rate is, make adjustments, and then apply it from that going forward. It's almost like I've done it so much now, I just go by feel. I know what it should sound like. Clover hitting the ground, brassica hitting the ground, buckwheat, rye, and rye at 200 pounds per acre versus rye at 100. 75 pounds of urea per acre on my brassica crop. You just know what it looks like. But again, you're always erring on that side of caution if you forget about the setting numbers, and you'll be able to figure it out pretty quickly. Number 3, first year switch mowing. If you haven't practiced a lot of weed control, or if you're using limited weed control on a late start to a field area where it had a lot of weeds, you get a couple sprayings in, you know there's going to be more weeds coming. Then once those weeds are in that 8 to 10 to 12 inch range, and you can see that switchgrass coming in underneath, I like to mow down to the top of the switchgrass so it gets exposed to the sunlight. At that point, you don't have a lot of weed cover in there, so you're not clumping grasses. I'd rather mow when the weeds are 8, 10 inches high than when they're 12, 15 inches high, because you don't have that debris laying on young switch. But mowing is important. Taking care of your switch is important. You take care of it in this first year or two, and it'll pay big rewards back for decades to come. You can maintain it for a long time. You never have to burn it. You can just mow it. Easy to do. And really, when it gets to June, I'm going on a client trip in early June. When I come back, I have a couple fields that I know have weeds in them coming in because they were junky, weedy areas to begin with. I was able to get seed on the soil through the weeds, spray a couple times, simazine, and then glyphosate after spring green up. And then they do need some mowing this year. And if I don't mow, then I lose my field. So it's really important to get that mowing, and that first step is in June sometime when the weeds are 8 to 10, 12 inches high. You're cutting it down to the top of the switchgrass, and that'll get that sunlight to the switch, give it the life it needs, and help it outcompete those weeds. Number 4, I talk about that easy no-till process. We're doing that on our new land this year, where we're looking at new plots. We sprayed 3 plots. We sprayed them first with a mixture of 2,4-D and glyphosate. They're about as dead can be now. And when it comes to mid-June, I want more weeds in that field, because you can't kill weeds unless you see them. Yes, you can have a pre-emergent like simazine, but weeds are going to come. So I like those weeds to come. I like there to be lots of moisture, hot weather. Weeds come, I'll kill them again mid-June. I'm going to kill them a third time the end of July. At that same time, I'll plant brassica on one side of the plot. You can plant brassica, clover, chicory, rye, oats, and even peas. If you get a lot of moisture for peas, they'll work pretty well too. So there's a lot of things that you can plant onto an easy no-till field, but you have to keep up with your sprayings. I've missed a second year spraying. This is back maybe in 08 to 09, right around there. And that was a real bummer because we didn't have food plots that year. I let the weeds go for about 2.5 months. They were chest high. And when I went back to plant and spray in August, it was useless at that point with limited equipment, no earthworking, no plowing, no disking, no tilling. So if you want to keep it simple, cheap and easy, then keep up with your sprayings. They should be 4 to 6 weeks apart. That puts mid-June for your second spraying, the end of July for your third spraying, and then you should be good to go. If you didn't wait until those weeds were 2 feet high in the spring, you hit them more when it was 8, 10 inches high, 12 inches high at the most, then you'll have soil exposure, especially for your small seeds, to provide a great seed bed going into this planting season starting around the first part of August to middle of August. Now, shooting lanes. This is a great time to clear shooting lanes. You cut those lanes around your tree stands, future tree stands, and what's really cool about that is by the time hunting season rolls around, then the deer have gotten used to all those cuttings. If you go there in mid-August, end of August, start cutting shooting lanes, it takes a while for the deer to get used to them, and you have these trees laying there with leaves on. I'd rather do that in June, July, even May, cut those shooting lanes, and then get the stand in towards the end of the summer, just a couple weeks before hunting season, because then everything else is already done. I've already put mock scrapes in, trail cameras, shooting lanes. Then it's just a matter of strapping the tree stand to the tree and enjoying the hunt afterwards, because you've taken care of your screening, your access, your trail cams, your mock scrapes, your shooting lanes. The last step should be that tree stand, and June is a great time to clear those shooting lanes because you have full leaves. You can actually see what's going to happen. If you're clearing before leaf out, it can be very misleading to actual what the openings are as it gets into the fall. Screening blend planting, the perfect time. End of June is great for a lot of areas. I recommend John Comp's screening blend. It's called HD screening. John has a no nonsense, no frills approach to food plotting. He just wants to be right. He just wants, just like me, I'm not going to recommend a product unless I truly believe in it. And his screening blend is probably the best in the country. And to be the best in the country, it's got to stand up. He lives up in Menominee, Michigan. And so great northern variety that stands up to a lot of snow. You have to plant it exactly how John tells you to plant it and recommend. Don't think that you can reinvent the wheel. It has to be covered up a little bit, is HD screening blend, but it has no food in it. And that's important because so many screening products, from vining beans to various forms of sorghum to corn, sunflowers, they're all food for deer. The last thing you want to do, whether you're screening deer from hunters, you don't want to have food in your screening blend that invite deer to that screen that you're actually trying to screen from other deer or hunters. So the worst thing you could do is have them eat your screen, let alone be in that screen when you're trying to access a stand location. John tests his screening blends every single year. It's by far the best in the country that I've seen. There's a lot of combinations out there that people call their own secret proprietary blend, but look at the seeds on there. Make sure there's no food. And when you do that, you'll probably eliminate 70-80% of all screening blends out there. The HD screening blend is an annual. So I look at it as a temporary step to switchgrass, maybe conifers in the future, hinge cuts, berms, whatever it might be. There's a lot of ways to create screens for your food plots and for your access. But then for an annual screening blend, that's hard to beat. And June is the planting month for that. A lot of times towards the end of June, because I'm not looking for something to get 13, 14 feet high. I'm looking for something to get 8 to 10 feet high and very thick and strong. And those screening blends are, great time to plant in June. Now, long range shooting fun. This is where if you're starting to shoot your bow a lot in April and May, you're starting to get outdoors just a little bit here and there. I like to step it up to where if I plan to shoot to 30 yards, and if you look back, I have articles going back on this for 10 to 12 years. I've been writing about this for a very long time and encouraging others to do the same. But you always should practice 10 yards, 20 yards, even double what you would in the woods during your practice time out in the field. That gives you a lot more confidence when you step up to a 30-yard shot in the woods becomes very easy when you're practicing at 50, 60, 70 yards, even out to 80 to 100 yards. Maybe you'd never shoot past 30, but I'll guarantee you shoot 60, 70, 80 and you keep your arrows on paper and you make good shots, it's going to be a lot easier taking that 30-yard shot, let alone a 27-yard shot or a 22-yard shot when it comes to crunch time during the season. So always look at stepping up eventually as your capabilities allow to where you can keep on paper. Of course, you're starting at those shorter distances first, but as the weeks progress, and especially as you get into mid-June and end of June, you're taking those longer shots. And that leads into number 8. We have a charity event this year. Chris B from Chris B Archery is going to be here, and I'm challenging Chris to a 100-yard shoot-off. And, on one tact I've said, Chris is definitely going to win, but that's no fun. I say, I'm going to beat Chris. So we'll just take that approach. But whether that happens or not, that's a big stretch. But we're going to have some fun for a charity event. It's for Camp Kicking Bear. It's a great youth organization designed to get kids in the outdoors, a great outdoors, and get a bow in their hands. So that's really hard to beat when it comes to charities. All proceeds from that day, all money. Now, I'm not just saying profits. I'm just saying anything we raise is going towards them. If we'll have expenses on our own, it's going to be here at my place in Minnesota. Only 50 people will be able to attend. I've had habitat days that are $500 to $800 per person for that day. This is going to be about a 5-hour habitat day. We'll have a seminar in the pole building. We'll have various sponsors here to assist. We'll have a bunch of side-by-sides to get people out on the property. A local Polaris dealership is actually offering us those for the day to use. We'll have some food, some lunch. Kids are free. Chris is going to have some time where he's instructing the kids, adults on shooting tips. That'll be a lot of fun. 50 people, it's $200 per ticket. So it's going to be a limited amount that are here, but the beauty is Dylan will be here. Chris will have his people here, Mitchell, and we'll get this all on video. We'll create videos out of it. So for those of you that can't attend, which will be a lot of you, you will at least show a lot of pieces of that day on YouTube, on the channel, on social media so that you can be a part of it. And something we're opening up too, we have to explore the details a little bit more, but I'm opening up a raffle for a 2-day hunt on my property here in Minnesota. It'll be the last weekend, probably in September. We have to finalize that time. We will film it. The only buck that's off limits, I think, is Venti, but every other big buck is on the table for you to shoot. And we're going to open that up to at least 200 tickets at $50 a ticket. That'll be opened up to social media. So even if you can't attend the event, we will have a raffle for that hunter to come in, stay with us here and hunt with us for that weekend, and it will be a lot of fun. I wouldn't be surprised that, I don't know if Dylan will film it, or Dante, or myself, or who's going to be in the tree stand, but we'll have some fun that weekend and hopefully shoot a nice deer and at least get the experience of what we're trying to do here on the property. And the bottom line, the reason I'm doing that is, you know, I can be kind of selfish sometimes when it comes to big bucks and hunting, and at least wanting my family to shoot them, friends here. But it's for a great cause, you know, Camp Kicking Bear, and that's what it's all about. We had a charity event last year, and someone said, "You're just, you know, trying to raise money, this, that," and I had to remind them, this is a charity. This is for something. This isn't for us. Chris isn't getting a dime out of this. I'm not getting him a dime. We're getting our social media platforms involved and making YouTube videos, but the bottom line is we're trying to raise a lot of money for Camp Kicking Bear, which is a great organization. And I invite you to check that out in the future, maybe be a part of it in the future, and we'll have a lot more information about that to come in these coming weeks. Look for it on my website, at the top of the page, on Instagram, Facebook, and certainly YouTube, and we'll have links where you can sign up for that if you're one of those lucky 50 people. It's just open to the first 50 people at $200 a person. And then kids are free. I don't know if we'll do that 16 and younger, 14 and younger, but we want kids here. We want to be involved with Chris B in the instructional portion, and we want them to be a part of the day. And guess what? You know, on Father's Day, and kids getting out of the house and doing something like this for an event, I think it'll be a worthwhile event for you to attend on Father's Day, and I look forward to seeing you. And that completes our June deer chores. You can imagine I have a lot of deer chores when it comes to that charity event, even getting my pole building clean and getting things in order out on the property. There's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of fun, and most of all, there's a lot of rewarding stuff, whether you're coming to a charity event or working towards your deer season, working towards a healthier habitat in your herd and your hunting experience. We're getting close now, just a few months away till opening day. And enjoy June. There's a lot to do. Like every month, it never ends. And I hope you enjoy the process all year long. I'm excited to tell you guys about my latest web class. It's how to plant food plots, how to design your food plot program. And it covers everything. And really, there's 30 videos, over 10 hours, 11 hours of footage, workbook, hats, you know, all that stuff. On top of it, I urge you to check out the link. But I cover 5 main areas: critical food plot concepts, where to plant, how to create, what to plant, and finally how to plant. It takes you through that step by step so you can make your own decisions that apply to you and build a great high quality food plot program this year, whether you have decades of experience or no experience at all.